Dr. Roberts, thanks for coming back on. I was gonna defer it over to you to say where do you want to start with topics, but you said offline, well, it's your show. So since it's my show, I let's just get right into what you wrote about in regards to tariffs this morning. And before you start, I want people to recording this today is April the 8th, and at 1 p.m., a little after 1 p.m. Eastern time. So as we sit here today, what were your thoughts when first mentioned of the tariffs, and what do where do you think we're at now with it?
Well, Mike, I think the tariffs are not, I don't think Trump's in the process of establishing a permanent high tariff regime. I think he's using the threat of tariffs to get other countries to give agreements that are more fair in terms of trade, and in some cases, maybe many cases, agreements unrelated to trade or tariffs. So I see them as temporary. Recently, the Secretary of Commerce um, said that the tariffs would only last a few weeks or a few months during the period of negotiation. So there's been a lot of hype and hysteria about the tariffs. Of course, the Democrats, the media, the American establishment, they want to use the tariff issue that they are trying to create to harm Trump or cost him support. Or perhaps what may be going on, Mike, is that now that Wall Street is declaring the tariffs will cause a recession, the Federal Reserve has cover to cause a recession. And of course, a recession would impact the midterm congressional elections, maybe shifting the balance of control of the House and Senate back to the Democrats, and that would be the end of any more Trump reforms. So it could be, an orchestration in process that's going to slap Trump down, uh, or it could just be another failed effort to make an issue of something that's not the issue it's presented to be. So once again, um, the tariff issue is at the present time regarded by the administration as a temporary negotiating tool.
What are your thoughts on the Commerce Secretary Lutnick?
Well, I don't know much about him, but he did say that this is a temporary thing while we negotiate. So uh, either they regard the current uh, trade situation as unfavorable to us, and it may be. I don't know. I haven't compared other countries' tariffs against us with our essential non-existent tariffs against them. I think the issue for Trump is also clouded by the trade deficit we have with China. I don't know if Trump understands that this is not China's fault, it's the fault of the American corporations who offshore their production for the American market. So if Apple and Nike and Levi and everyone else is making the stuff they sell to Americans in China and Mexico and Vietnam, when those items come here to be marketed, they come in as imports. So I would say the vast bulk of the American trade deficit is,
Can you hear me? Okay.
yeah, I
Okay.
could. I could hear you. I don't know what happened. I guess Zoom failed or you pushed the wrong button
No,
somewhere.
no, no. It just froze up, but that's okay. I'll take all that out. So,
Well, I don't know where we were.
so with China and tariffs, one thing I want to ask you is in regards to the Treasury Secretary. One, what are your thoughts on him, on Scott Bessent?
I don't have any. Um, this the way things are being handled, they're not really at this point issues for the departments. So, uh, and I haven't seen any self-identifying policy statements by him. So I assume that he's going to try to be cooperative with Trump's agenda. Um, but I don't know.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted, launched by McIlvaney Financial Group, the simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. Well, and so in regards to China, because China snapped back and they said they were going to counter tariff, and then Trump responded yesterday with even a higher percentage increase on the tariffs. And I saw somebody write on social media for whatever this is, and got me thinking. China provides so much stuff, right, to us. And Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was talking about this in interviews he did in regards to, United States has more leverage because China needs to sell stuff. But also, China provides a lot of pharmaceuticals to people in this country. So if they decided that they wanted to cut that off, what kind of impact would that have on the United States?
Well, the Israelis would sell us more. Look, I think that Trump, beginning in his first term, has handled the situation with China incorrectly. And I think he's handling it incorrectly now. China is a big and powerful country economically and militarily. It's an ancient country. The only other ancient country is Iran, which used to be Persia. And of course, today it's only partly Persian. All other countries are brand new on the block. So you don't approach a country like that with threats and counter threats. Moreover, they're perfectly reasonable. And it's easy to sit down and talk to them politely and negotiate something that works for everybody. And so I thought that even in his was making a serious mistake. And I think he made that mistake for two reasons. One, he was under pressure as a Russian agent. Russia Gate, remember that? He was being investigated by his own FBI, his own CIA, his own Department of Justice. And I think he felt he had to show to patriotic Americans that he was standing up for America somewhere. And so I think he started on China because they were after him on Russia, and he couldn't really effectively refute that. So he started showing he was, ready to fight for America, and China was the chosen enemy. I think also he was misinformed by the sorry bunch of people he had in office in his first term that China was exploiting us because look at the trade imbalance. Look, uh, They send us, say, $450 billion every year, and we only send them 150. And so we're being exploited in this. Well, what they didn't tell him is most of that 450 billion, or whatever the figure is the offshore production of American firms. It's not Chinese. It's produced with Chinese labor, but they're American products. Apple computers, Apple watches, Apple iPhones, and so on for all the other producers that offshored. So I don't think he understood that. So he picked on China. Um, it's a mistake the way he's handling this. And it's also a mistake, in my view, that you cannot address the offshoring problem with tariffs because the goods are American goods. So you're putting tariffs on American goods. And what he should do instead, Mike, he should call in the executives of the offshoring corporations, Apple, all the rest of them, call them into the White House to a big meeting and say, now, look, uh, we have this trade deficit because you produce what you sell here abroad. And it comes into the country, it blows up our trade deficit. And look also at what you've done. You by moving off well-paid manufacturing jobs, you've diminished the American middle class. By diminishing the American middle class, you undermine the tax base of the cities and states that were our manufacturing cities and states. They are having trouble with their infrastructure, with their debt. Their municipal bond ratings are falling. They can't, they've got a problem servicing the government pensions. Uh, Look at all the things you did that caused massive harm to Americans just so you could get a bigger pay packet. That's what he needs to tell them. Put them on the spot and then say, what are you going to do about it? It's not China's problem. It's the problem of our own corporations. They did it to get a bigger pay packet. Well, that's the way to approach it. So he's going about it, completely backwards, and it's not going to work. The Chinese aren't going to buckle. What does he think he's dealing with? So I think that's a huge mistake he's making, and it's gratuitous. And I don't know why there's nobody in his administration smart enough to tell him. Maybe they just don't know. You have to make an effort to be informed. And most of the people he has in there had full-time jobs, and the full-time jobs use them up. His Treasury Secretary was some big guy on Wall Street. Well, that's a pretty busy job. I think it was Defense Secretary. Was he a TV personality
There's
or
a Fox
something?
News.
Yeah, well, that can be a stressful, big-time job too. You say one word and you're gone. This wrong, and you're gone. So I I think he's just handling that wrong. Um, but of course, you see his threats now already. 50 countries, including some that are where our offshore production is produced, like Vietnam. 50 countries have said, okay, we can take tariffs off. So it's producing results, and yet all you get from the media and Wall Street is it's producing recession, falling stock market. In my opinion, part of the fall in the stock market is just the hedge funds making profits, short selling and buying back, and they're manipulating. And they have an excuse for the market to go down, and so they make money out of it. And of course, all the Democrats and the liberal left want to do is embarrass Trump, get rid of him. It's an exercise in hate. So it's not the it's a problem, but it's not the problem that the media presents. It's a different kind of problem.
Dr. Roberts, what is in your view, what is he dealing with in regards to China? Who is China and what kind of enemy, or not enemy, what kind of adversary is this?
Well, as far as China speaks to the issue, they don't want to be an adversary. They're not interested in being anybody's adversary. They're interested in partnerships, doing deals, making money, and um, well, it's like the former leader was named Deng Xiaoping. It's good to be rich, he said. So I think their focus is, they have a massive population and the party wants to stay in control without having to rely on terror. And so it wants the people to be satisfied, and they're satisfied if their situation's being improved. And so I think that's the main focus of the Chinese. It's not planning to take over some place or the other. I think that's the last thing they want. So if they take it over, it will simply be through economic cooperation. So that's what kind of place it is. The people themselves aren't determining things by voting, but they don't hear either. The vote here is essentially meaningless because it's the campaign contributions from the vested interest, the Israel lobby, the military security complex, pharmaceuticals, agribusiness. They're the ones that run our government. The voting is a cloak, makes it look Democrat. But who does the House and Senate respond to? The voters? No, to the campaign donors. So in China, the fact that people aren't determining things, it doesn't mean anything. In fact, within the party, there is democracy, or at least a limited form of democracy, because the party members are active in determining the leadership. So it's a workable system, and as long as it produces results, it has the support of the people. And I think that's all the Chinese want. They just want economic success. And so all of this picking a fight is entirely our doing. It's not China picking the fight. They're not starting these troubles. We start them. We misperceive the cause of the budget deficit. It's our own corporations who are causing it. We are the ones provoking uh, hostility between Taiwan and China, not the Chinese. So it's a serious mistake, and I'm very disappointed that Trump and his team are caught up in it. And it certainly it can't create confidence in the Kremlin's mind now that they're committed to some sort of negotiation with the United States about Ukraine. They can't feel very secure when Trump is being so belligerent toward China. China is, as I said, is an extremely powerful country economically and militarily, and you're not going to get anywhere threatening them. The party leadership can't look like it's buckling up to the Americans and be respected by its own people. So uh, it would be best if Trump just shut up about China because everything he says is wrong and is causing problems.
How far then do you see this going in terms of the tariff, the tick for tack between the United States and China?
Who knows? But the tariff is a negotiating tool. And as such, it seems to be working elsewhere. Now, where it has not worked so far is with Europe and China. And the European leaders who do not have the support of the people, these are all minority governments, they hate Trump. I think because they see him as busting up their gravy train, NATO, all the grift that comes from the U.S. military and economic aid to Ukraine. I mean, here's Trump taking away bagfuls of money, and so they can't stand it. Um, but I don't think these are important issues. And the NATO should have ended in 1991. And instead, it's being expanded. It's no longer the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. They're trying to make it a worldwide, including the Far East, Asia, China, Indonesia. Well, clearly, that's not a defensive alliance. It's some sort of a cover for aggressive actions.
So we talk about this, we talk about China then, and this exchange. And it appears now, you said 50 countries are in line to remove the tariffs. How long do you see this whole thing going on for in terms of this tariff war?
I don't know. And I report that the media says 50 countries. This is in many places, so I assume it's true. Um, Once again, all I can say is that the Commerce Secretary says it'll go on for a few weeks and maybe a few months. In other words, there may be some supply disruptions. They will be small compared to the supply disruptions of the COVID lockdowns. Moreover, I'm informed, if it's true, who knows, I'm informed that Trump has issued a 13-page appendix listing all of the exempt items from tariffs. What are these items? They're all the imported items American producers need to make their product. In other words, Trump is trying to prevent the shutdowns that resulted from the COVID mandates by excluding imports that are factors of production into an American production function. So if I'm a company and I'm producing product X and I need inputs A and B from abroad, the tariffs don't apply to my needs. So if this report is correct, and I assume it is, then all the supply disruptions they're speaking of are unlikely. And so once again, we may be looking at the media, the Democrats, and the American establishment, which is totally corrupt, and making a mountain out of a molehill. And the attitude of the Commerce Secretary suggests that it is a molehill. Several weeks, several months. And on top of that, you have all these exempt products that are inputs into an American factory's production function. So basically, it looks like the tariffs are just a way to force people to make agreements. And it doesn't mean to force them to do exactly what Trump's telling them, but to make an agreement covering the issue that's in his mind. So, and why does he do it this way? I think because uh, any real tariff negotiations take years. It can take years if it's just between two countries. Now, if it's between the United States and the world and all the products, it could go on forever. And so Trump would never see any progress during his reign. So that's probably why he's pushing it so hard, is to get something done before the midterm elections. Um, the Democrats are just as capable of stealing midterm elections, in fact, more capable of stealing midterm elections than they are presidential elections. So he faces that prospect. And uh, so you can see using the threat of tariffs to get agreements makes sense. If you set up tariff negotiations, they're endless.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and the gentleman said, 6 months this will all be over, and I said, 6 months, 6 months, and I thought to myself after, it kind of reminds me of COVID when they were saying 2 weeks to slow the curve, stop this, whatever it was, stop the spread. And here we are 5 years later, and things have not gone back to what they were, and they never will. And that's what I feel like. I mean, I know they're different situations, but it was a reminder when he said that to me yesterday, because I think this is one of those things, to your point, tariffs can take years. And this system that we're in right now, I think we're at the end of it. And this is not something that's just going to turn around in a week and everyone's going to go back to their lattes and yoga mats.
Well, 50 countries turned around immediately. So it doesn't take many more and the problem's done. I think the main problem is what I've already said. It was Trump's approach to China. He should have taken a different approach. But of course, everything can go wrong. Everything can go wrong with everything, even with correct policies. So, uh, but it can't go on too long, because if it does have all of the dire effects that Wall Street and the Democrats and the liberal left are proclaiming, it'll all be over by the midterm elections. If it causes some massive recession and stock market collapse, then the Democrats will take the House and Senate, and that'll be the end of all of this. So it can't go on as long as the COVID lockdowns, because uh, everyone, the public as well, fell for the propaganda about COVID and the vax and uh, the necessity of lockdowns and all the other lies and endless lies. I don't think that the tariff issue is caught up in lies. The agenda is to make some change in the trade system that Trump thinks the United States needs to be on a fair and equal footing. And so, they're not trying to sell vaccines or make people infertile or destroy family businesses so that things can be more monopolized. I mean, that's what COVID was used for, or to reduce the population, or make hundreds of billions for the pharmaceutical companies. That's not what's going on. with tariffs. So it's a totally different uh, situation.
One things that could really throw a wrench in all this, and I'm posing this as a question. If one of these wars escalates, Russia Ukraine escalates further or continues, or in the Middle East. And Trump announced yesterday, or he said yesterday when Netanyahu was there, that they're scheduled to have a call on Saturday with Iran.
Mhm. Well, I don't think Trump wants a war with Iran. Um, and we would come out, if Iran fights, we will be defeated. And I think the Joint Chiefs are smart enough to tell Trump that. Once again, I think all the threats to Iran are again to create a negotiating situation. Uh, Trump doesn't want any wars because wars are all consuming. They take the focus off everything else. And so his domestic agenda goes on the back burner and nothing happens. You can't, if you had war, that's the issue. I mean, a real war. And if Iran fights, they may not. They may decide, look, if we defeat these stupid Americans, they'll nuke us. But an attack on Iran, first of all, not a single one of the B-2s will be able to penetrate the Iranian airspace. They'll be blown out of the skies because the Iranians have the Russian S-400. They control the skies, not us. Every F-15, 16, whichever the Navy has that flies in there will never get there, and every one of the carriers will be sunk. And every American base in the area will be hit. And the three main Israeli cities will be destroyed. That's what it means to go to war with Iran, if they fight. Now, as I say, they may say, well, if we really whip them, their feelings are going to be hurt and their ego, and they're going to start screaming, nuke them, nuke them. And so we can't really win a conventional war with the Americans because if we do, they'll nuke us. That may keep the Iranians from fighting. On the other hand, Putin has said that he really won't put up with an attack on Iran. And China has huge investments there. It's dependent on Iran for energy. Um, they may simply say that Iran's covered by their nuclear umbrella. To lose Iran would be disastrous for Russia because it opens up a path for jihadists, CIA jihadists, into the Russian Federation, where there are Muslim provinces. Um, China already lost its extensive investments in energy in Libya when we overthrew that regime. They probably don't want to go through that again in Iran. China's one vulnerability is oil. And so they've got Russia, they've got Iran. They don't they want to be sure they have access to oil. This was the big problem for the Japanese. It's how we forced the Japanese into attacking us at Pearl Harbor. We cut them off from oil. So um, it's not a foregone conclusion there's going to be any war. Of course, it's correct. The Israelis are doing their best to get us to attack Iran for them. They don't want to do it. But if somehow we can do it and get the blame and the retaliation, that's different. So of course, everything can go wrong. There's many a slip between cup and lip. But I don't think Trump intends a war. I don't think he means all this stuff that he's threatening to do to Iran. I think if the Joint Chiefs thought he meant it, they would be frightened to death because they know the carriers can't be protected. They know the planes can't get through. And I don't know what Israel thinks or why they somehow won't get these missiles raining down on them. Iran has already shown them they can penetrate the Iron Dome. And there are really only three Israeli cities. They're not all that huge, and it's not that much trouble for conventional weapons to destroy them. So it's a situation that doesn't comply with Trump's threats. The threats aren't conceivable given the real situation, unless Iran doesn't fight. Who
What
knows if they're going to fight or not? You know, if you're the chief of naval operations and you've got several of your aircraft carriers out there, and you're thinking about, do I want those sunk? What can I do to stop it? His Iranians, they've got hypersonic anti-ship missiles. We can't stop them. Do I want to risk it? And he's going to be saying, Mr. President, no.
what
Does the Air Force want to risk its B-2 bombers uh, blown out of the sky? No. Does the Trump administration want people yelling, nuke Iran, nuke Iran? So if we start throwing nukes around, that kind of opens up for other people. And there are people that have nukes, India, Pakistan, China, Russia. So it's you just have to hope people think about all the aspects of a policy before they do it. And I think Trump's approach to Iran is wrong. He should very politely say, look, we're in all these difficulties, and the Jews are pushing me to attack you, and they have tremendous influence in America and in the Congress, and it's in your interest and my interest, us work out some agreement now. Let's see. The Israelis claim you making nuclear weapons. So we made a deal with you some time back that we wouldn't be bothering you as long as you just enriched uranium for nuclear power and medical reasons, and didn't go all the way up to the level of making weapons grade material. So how about we send some inspectors? And let's verify that so I can shut down all this talk about Iranian nukes. And if the inspectors find the weapons, and it means you're not keeping that agreement we made, whether we're keeping it or not, we need to see how to get in compliance. But we need to unwind this system of hostilities that the Israelis are exploiting at my expense as well as yours. And that's the way to approach Iran. And you can say, and I was wondering if all these sanctions on Iran are really sensible, because to any extent it disrupts oil flows and oil marketing, it raises the price. And the price goes up for the producers in every country. And so, maybe we can come to some sort of reasonable understanding. That's the way to do it. It would work. The Iranians aren't threatening us. They're not making war on us. They've never done anything to us. Yet, what have we done to them? We overthrew their democratic elected government and stuck in the Shah of Iran. When they threw the Shah out, we declared them an enemy because they threw our puppet out. So they're an enemy. They threw our puppet out, they took over the embassy. Oh, we're so humiliated. They've taken over the embassy. They're holding our diplomatic people hostage. Well, that was our fault. Not They're responding to our uh, control of them. They said we had enough of being controlled by you. So sometimes the United States has to admit it's wrong and did wrong things in order to avoid more conflict. And that's what's missing. What are the people too insecure? Americans too insecure to say, yeah, we made a mistake. Well, if they're that insecure, they're damn sure not going to be made great again. So there should be a public discussion. Instead, it's just narrative control. Everything's narrative control, narrative control. And the narratives are ancient and tired and worn out. The Iranian narrative is so out of date. It's a joke. So they need to get a new narrative, a realistic one for a change.
How does Turkey and Syria play a part in all this?
And Syria?
Yeah, the Turkey moving through Syria.
Syria doesn't exist any longer. It's a non-existent state like Libya. Uh, it doesn't exist. Turkey has the north, Israel has the south. We've got the east or the southeast where the oil is, and a bunch of CIA mercenary jihadist gangs are somewhere in the middle trying to hold on to some of it and are creating mayhem, uh, killing all kinds of people. So, and the Israelis have said, we're in southern Syria and we're staying. So who's going to get them out? And Turkey has got where the Kurds were, and they said they're staying because we don't want a Kurdish state. And Trump has said, we got the oil and we're keeping it because it's profitable. So um, Turkey, I don't know. Sooner or later, Turkey will have to decide is it better off aligned with Russia or with NATO. And who knows? Um, they'll decide that based on Putin's behavior. If Putin comes across as indecisive, weak, and unwilling to assert Russia, Turkey will stay with us. But I don't know how people will behave, so we can't say. But they're not really important to the situation. Those of no essential importance.
So you segue me perfectly here when you bring up Putin and where we sit with Russia Ukraine, because that still to me doesn't seem like it's close to a resolution. And what are your thoughts on that?
And my thoughts are that both Trump and Putin made a terrible mistake. Um, Trump made a terrible mistake by not first talking to Putin, working out what the agreement is, and then telling Zelensky, this is the agreement, period. It's over. Putin made a mistake by agreeing to uh, some kind of nebulous ceasefire that only he is observing in pursuit of some unspecified agreement. So he doesn't even know what he's entered into. And then Trump is cluttering the agreement by bringing in extraneous factors, such as a deal with Ukraine for its rare earths. So now part of the negotiation is between Trump and Zelensky about Ukraine's rare earths. Well, what has this got to do with ending the conflict? Nothing. But it's another extraneous measure that comes into it, and there's disagreement. between Zelensky and Trump about it. So what will be the next extraneous issue that enters the negotiation? You see what I'm saying? And so here you have Putin on the verge of a victory, and he enters into an unspecified agreement. He has no idea how it's going to turn out. It could even turn out with him negotiating away a victory. Well, it makes no sense. In my view, it was a completely stupid decision on the part of both leaders. And as these are the two leaders that count the most in the world, to see them make such stupid decisions scares me. What other stupid decisions will they make? What was served by this stupid decisions? Nothing good. What are the consequences? We don't know. Putin loses complete confidence in Trump. Trump says if Putin doesn't agree to an immediate total ceasefire, not just a ceasefire on energy infrastructures, but I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do, well, is that what you tell Russia when you're trying to negotiate with them, that you're threatening them like you're the mafia and they're some little storekeeper? For Trump to do that is just absolutely absurd. If I was Putin, I would give him the finger. I'd even be tempted to drop a nuke on him. So I don't really know. Putin, I think this issue, what this issue really is, and after this, maybe we can give up on this interview. I think what the real issue is, and the real reason Putin has refused to win a war. We're now into the fourth year of a war. It should have been won in 3 weeks. Why? Because I think, I can't prove, but I think Putin is using the war to get a great power agreement like Yalta. He wants another Yalta agreement, and he's using the war trying to get that agreement. And that's why he hasn't won it. If he wins it, he doesn't have the war to use to get a Yalta agreement. And this is an extraneous issue to ending the conflict. And I don't think the United States is capable at this time of even comprehending that that's what Putin's up to, or the power of such an agreement. Be, in a way, a good thing. Remember now, Putin went to the wire trying to get a mutual security agreement with the West. And the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, he and Lavrov, they were pleading with the Biden regime, pleading with NATO, pleading with the EU, just give us a mutual security agreement. And everybody says, no. That left them no recourse but to go into Donbass, because we had spent 8 years building a powerful Ukrainian army that was about to invade the two independent republics in Donbass and kill all the Russians. And Putin simply couldn't allow that. Well, he was counting on getting the security agreement because he thought he was dealing with rational, sane people. He didn't realize he was dealing with crazed morons. And so he wasn't prepared when he had to go in. They had minimal forces available. The most important one was a semi-private army. So I think this war, this conflict, which, as the New York Times published the other day, the CIA's confession, it's been a war of the United States against Russia from day one, and that Ukraine only supplied the dead bodies. They're the war dead, but every decision has been made by the Americans. And so it's an American war against Russia. Well, Putin wants a world settlement, a Yalta agreement. That's what he wants. And the Russians want that. If you look now, recently I've seen two articles written by influential Russian analysts, people in advisory positions to the government, and they're touting a Yalta agreement and how helpful it would be and how we have to work toward this. I've seen it in other ways. A few years back, I was invited to speak to the Russian Academy of Sciences on the whole question of a new Yalta agreement. And I told them I thought that they wouldn't get one because of the neoconservative doctrine of American hegemony. If you've got hegemony, what do you want an agreement for? And they didn't want to hear it, so they just cut me off. In other words, a Yalta agreement is in their head, and so they can't think straight or see straight. And I think that's the only reason the Russians didn't win this war a long time ago. Damn, if we win the war, we're losing a chance to get a long-lived agreement worked out with the Western world, and all these troubles and sanctions and things can go away, and we can get around to the business of developing Russia. That's my opinion, and if I were to say that at a meeting of the Council of Foreign Relations, they'd all laugh.
Dr. Roberts, can I ask you one more question?
Okay, yeah.
What is your assessment as we're 3 months into this Trump administration overall?
Yeah. I think a lot of good initiatives done in a haphazard way. I think everything has been haphazard. The tariffs, he should have just called people in and said, you know, this doesn't work for us. We're going to have to adjust it. You're going to cooperate. That's the way to do that. I think he made a mistake in the way he played all of the findings of the Department of Governmental Efficiency of Musk's operation. Each one that came out, he fired somebody. He should have let all of these accumulate, not say a word, get all of the accumulation, then have a national televised address to the House and Senate and lay this before them. This is what we have found. What are you going to do about it? This puts the monkey on their back. This prevents all of the corrupt Democrat justices countermanding his orders. That's the way to handle that. And then the American people would have seen it all at once. Instead, what they see is they get this scandal, and Trump fires people, and the judge says you can't. And then all the liberal left start crying, oh, these poor people lose their job. Or we can't perform public services anymore. You're not going to get your Social Security checks. You're not going to get your Medicare. And this then undermines all the findings of the Department of Governmental Efficiency by threatening people. They turn it into threats. Well, that was a mistaken way to handle it. We should never have handled it that way. And I've already said why the Ukrainian situation has been mishandled. So again, I would say, you know, give them an A+ for the initiatives and, you know, a D for performance. My cat's asserting his authority over my time.
Well,
The
well,
cats really rule the household. I mean, but so that's my assessment of it, Mike. I mean, um, I think it's a fair assessment. And the trouble is, nobody can think because the narratives control what is permissible to be thought. And what are the narratives? Oh, Iran, they caused 9/11. Oh, they're our enemy. Oh, Russia, they invaded Ukraine and they're going to invade all of Europe. See, these kinds of BS, propagandistic narratives, the conservatives believe them just as much as the liberal left. Oh, Israel is our great friend. God demands that we protect Israel. That's our function on earth. Just think about how many people hear that every Sunday from some sort of Zionist evangelical preacher. Well, you can't think. You just try to find Americans that can think. They reply to everything. If they know anything about it at all, it's the narrative they know. And if you say something about the narrative, trying to get them to think, they just come to the conclusion you're an anti-American. You're on the side of our enemy. What are you taking Iran's side for? I'm not. I'm just explaining a situation to you. Oh, yeah, but they're evil. They did this. They bombed the World Trade Center. I mean, in other words, ignorance prevails in the world, in the universities also, in the journals, and apparently in the Kremlin. So when you look at it that way, everything can go wrong. As difficult to get outside the box, to think outside the box. It's difficult. And if you do it, you find you're lonely. You're alone because the other people don't get out of the box and they just look at you suspiciously. I think I've said before, I quit giving speeches. You know, the Republicans, they hear, oh, he was in the Reagan administration. Get him to come speak to the party and the local party or something. Nope. I know too much. If I tell them what's going on, they'll think I'm a communist or something. You know, they want to hear that everything, all the propaganda they've swallowed is true. That's what they want to hear. And I tell these people that ask me, I said, look, I'm not a professional liar. I'm not going to go there and reinforce all the propaganda these people have already. And if I tell them what's going on, they're going to get mad and call me names. And so, no, I'm not going. And this is the problem. It's a serious problem. Now, you know, we got people like you and Nima and Larry Soprano, other people that run these podcasts, and they find a few people who tell them something outside the box and they try to spread the information. And it has some effect. But there's a huge number of people who don't know and who don't bother to watch. They just want to be entertained, or they're pressed to the wall to pay their bills, or so that's why it's such a challenge. So in a way, when the world now has, I think, three good leaders, four even, because I think the Iranian is reasonable, the Chinese one's reasonable. I think Putin and Trump are both gifted as leaders, but they don't seem to have the information they need, or they don't seem to have the ability to process the information or recognize it. So in a way, we are positioned for a big improvement in world relations because the four most powerful countries have good leadership. But the narratives are so ingrained and institutionalized, it's hard for leadership to function. This is my point. When when propaganda is institutionalized, it's ingrained, it's hard for a leader. And that I think is a serious situation, and that's why I don't really expect um, things to get as much better as they could.
I agree. Where can people find you, Dr. Roberts?
Just the website, www.paulcraigroberts.org.
As always, thank you so much for making yourself available. I look forward to continuing to follow your work and more conversations ahead.
Yes, Mike, of course.
Mic drop.